When you sit down with Javier Loya, the conversation does not begin where you might expect. He does not open with OTC global holdings, or global energy markets, or the mechanics of building one of the largest independent commodity brokerages in the world. Instead, he turns to something more personal, and in many ways, more revealing. He starts with people. Within minutes, he is talking about a young athlete from El Paso. The young man had talent, discipline, and drive, but he had gone largely unseen. College programs were not calling. No one had taken the time to notice. He had everything you would want, Loya said. But he didn't have the exposure. And without exposure, talent doesn't always translate into opportunity. The moment unfolded at the Greater El Paso Showcase, an event Loya founded to give overlooked high school players a chance to be seen by college recruiters. That day, something shifted. Coaches who had never heard the player's name began to watch him more closely. Within weeks, the calls came. Offers followed. Eventually, a scholarship. Later, Loya met the player's family. They told him that opportunity had changed the trajectory of their son's life. It meant access to education. It meant a different future, Loya said. Moments like that stay with you. They remind you what all of this is really about. He begins here for a reason. Long before the companies, the transactions, or the scale, Loya came to understand something fundamental. If you want to change outcomes for people, you have to build systems that allow them to be seen. That belief was formed early. Javier Loya grew up in El Paso in a Mexican-American household shaped by discipline and responsibility. My inspiration really came from a mix of upbringing and curiosity, Loya said. I grew up in a family where ownership wasn't optional. It was how you created opportunity. My parents believed that if you wanted something different, you had to build it yourself. That stayed with me. He carried that mindset to Columbia University, and later into the energy and commodities sector, where he became increasingly interested in how global systems actually function. Energy powers economies, he said. But when I got into the business, I realized the infrastructure behind commodity trading was often inefficient and opaque. That stuck with me. I kept thinking there has to be a better way to build this. That question became OTC Global Holdings. When Javier Loya co-founded OTC Global Holdings in 2007, he stepped into one of the most competitive and relationship-driven sectors in finance. Interdealer commodity brokerages operate at the center of global energy markets, connecting buyers and sellers of commodities such as natural gas, power, and oil. These firms facilitate transactions, provide price discovery, and help bring efficiency to markets that move billions of dollars every day. It was not an industry known for welcoming newcomers. The space was dominated by established firms with decades of history, deeply entrenched client relationships, and global reach. Success required more than technical knowledge. It required trust, speed, and the ability to operate in markets where information is constantly shifting. We were a startup competing against some of the largest brokerage firms in the world, Loya said. These were companies with enormous resources and long-standing relationships. There were moments when people questioned whether we could realistically compete at that level. But instead of discouraging us, it forced us to get very clear about how we were going to win. That clarity became a turning point. Rather than trying to replicate what already existed, Loya and his team chose to build differently, focusing on speed, adaptability, and a culture that pushed decision-making closer to the people doing the work. We realized early on that we couldn't win by doing things the traditional way, he said. We had to innovate faster, move faster, and empower our team in a way that wasn't typical in the industry. We built a culture around ownership, where people were trusted to think, act, and take responsibility. That became our edge. Over time, the company scaled into one of the largest independent interdealer commodity brokerages in the world, a position that placed it at the center of global energy flows and made it an attractive partner for larger institutions looking to strengthen their market position. That growth ultimately led to its next phase through a strategic transaction with BGC Group, marking a new chapter after nearly 2 decades of expansion. Yet when Loya reflects on that journey, he does not focus on scale alone. What I'm most proud of isn't just the company we built, he said. It's the ecosystem that grew around it. The people who came in early, learned the business, and went on to become leaders themselves. The opportunities that were created along the way. That's the part that endures. It is a perspective that positions Loya as more than a founder who built a successful company. It frames him as a builder of systems, someone who identified inefficiencies in global energy markets and created a platform that could operate at scale while still developing people within it. Entrepreneurship, for me, has never been about one company, he said. It's about building systems that create value and opportunity. If you can do that consistently, across industries, then you're not just building a business. You're building something that lasts. If there is a through line in Loya's career, it is not the industries he has entered, but the way he builds inside them. His leadership philosophy is grounded in 4 ideas that show up repeatedly in how he speaks about business: integrity, ownership, resilience, and opportunity creation. They are not presented as slogans. They are described as requirements. In commodities markets, trust is everything, Loya said. Billions of dollars can move based on relationships and credibility. If people don't trust you, nothing else matters. Ownership, in his view, is what transforms a company from a workplace into a platform. I believe people perform at their best when they feel true ownership in what they're building, he said. At OTC Global Holdings, we empowered teams to make decisions, to take responsibility. When people feel that level of trust, the entire organization becomes stronger. That philosophy also impacted how the company handled pressure. Markets change, industries evolve, you're going to face adversity, he said. Some of the toughest periods we went through ended up being the most valuable, because they forced us to adapt and get better. It is a model that relies less on control and more on alignment, a belief that if the culture is strong enough, the company can withstand the volatility around it. After OTC Global Holdings, Loya did not step away from building, rather, he shifted his focus. As chairman of GETCHOICE, Javier Loya is now working on a different kind of infrastructure challenge, helping organizations manage energy, telecom, and utility expenses through technology and data. It is a less visible part of the business world, but one with significant financial and operational impact. When we started building GETCHOICE, many people saw utility management as a back-office function, Loya said. We saw it as a massive opportunity to apply technology and analytics to help organizations control billions of dollars in spend and operate more efficiently. The pattern is familiar. Identify a system that is essential but under-optimized, then rebuild it with better tools and better insight. Loya applies that same lens beyond business as well. As a minority owner of the Houston Texans, he sees professional sports as another form of institution building, one that connects communities and creates shared identity. Great organizations, whether in sports or business, are built on culture, leadership, and execution, he said. Talent matters, but leadership alignment matters more. It is a reminder that his approach is not tied to a single sector. It is tied to a way of thinking. For Loya, success is not defined by a single milestone, but by what continues after it. Success, for me, is measured by impact and longevity, he explained. Financial success is one part of it, but the deeper question is whether you built something meaningful that lasts. That idea shows up in how he talks about his companies, his investments, and his community work. It also shows up in the advice he gives. Think bigger earlier, he said. Don't fear failure. Invest in people, and understand that success takes time. The companies people see today were built through years of persistence and constant evolution.